What up? Your girl's back.
And we missed you last week. We missed you.
Yes.
I missed y'all too.
We held it down, though. We held it down.
I see. Y'all got all them views without me. What's up with that?
We need you. Don't play. Don't play.
I was glad. I was like, look at you. I even dropped in. I didn't say nothing. I didn't want to be a distraction, but I saw y'all. I saw it.
We saw you. We saw you. We did a shout out to you.
I missed that part, but thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead.
So happy Saturday. I'm glad everyone is joining us. But before we get started and give all the tea about creating boundaries, not walls, we want to say thank you for joining us. And if you believe someone needs this message, please go ahead and share with them. And you definitely don't want to miss any new videos. So go ahead and hit that notification button so we pop up every time that we come on live or do a pre-recording. And for those of you who may not be Facebook followers but on YouTube, definitely go ahead and subscribe there so every time we go live on YouTube you see us. And for those of you, you in the streets today because it's a gorgeous day, catch us on replay because we definitely still it's still there for you to see and enjoy. This is an interactive conversation. So we ask engagement questions. So we want you to drop, a thumbs up or the heart button or comment. Let us know you're in here so we can give you a shout out. Because some of y'all be dropping them gems on us and we be like, oh Lord, we can't handle it, right? And we got to have the church say amen on it. So I will first introduce myself. I am Lisa Lewis Hole Daniels. I belong to Bae. I'm a whole wife and a whole mother. So I'm also the founder of Lionheart Society, where my clients and I engage on pivotal decisions that they're making about career, parenthood, and family, because in my organization, we want to see everyone win at life. So I will hand it over to the doctor so she can tell us what's going on.
Hey, listen, I am Dr. Katina Fuller Scott. I am All Things Be What Matters. That is the name of my company, my ministry, my statement of purpose, where I want you to be the best of who you are in what you do. So I'm a speaker, coach, trainer, and a leadership expert. And I'm so grateful to be in this group of powerhouses and for the opportunity, right, to feed the side of me that wants to build healthier marriages, healthier families, and ultimately healthier communities. And so feel free to reach out. And we're so excited that we have, as Lisa says, I don't know what is a half husband, because she says whole husband like these kids. I got a whole boyfriend. What's a half? Our whole husband and resident counselor, Mr. Ittrick Tobias. Tell the people who you are, and let's kick off the session.
Good evening, everyone. I am Ittrick Tobias, poet and social worker. My book will be out soon, Life Unscripted, book of poems. So hopefully you all support, and thank you all. Let's go ahead and get the show started.
All right, let's go. Go ahead, Lisa.
So today's topic, for those of you who have seen and who have not seen, we're continuing our Marriage Architect creating series, and today's topic is creating boundaries, not walls. And some of y'all are like, what? Because that has similar, but we're going to break it down for you. We're not going to leave you hanging. So we're going to break it down for you. But we first want to kind of set the stage, right, and talk about the definition of boundaries and walls and our perspective on those definitions. So first, there's a physical definition. So it involves the outermost edges of property. You can, a nation, city, municipality. So you kind of know what the limits are before you see the city limits of one city and you drive out of, you say, now you're entering the next city. So you can physically see those boundaries, but that's not the boundaries we're talking about. We're talking about relationship boundaries, right, guys? But they're just as important, but you can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
And so most often people don't really think about it until they get triggered. And so we had a discussion of where's that thin line between what is a healthy boundary in a marriage versus a wall, which we've deemed as prohibiting the marriage to really, or the relationship to really thrive. So I said a mouthful. So I'm gonna let my co-host get in with me and kind of mix it up. So what do y'all got going on? What do y'all think about that?
You know, when you think about boundaries, right? We normally see, and when we think about boundaries, we normally think negatively, right? But really, boundaries are acceptable limits we've set in place that sets us apart from other people. It is ultimately how we protect our own needs and our own desires, and really can be a sense of self-care. So it doesn't have to be a negative in the sense of Lisa was talking about, what you were talking about, Lisa, rather, in that we've created this wall where it's impenetrable, but it is a safe space of saying, this is my space. And I am using it to protect myself and to, just kind of make sure that I'm coming completely safe. Because sometimes people bring so much trauma into their relationships, experiences that they've had, and they've created these walls. And so with safe boundaries, we start tearing away at them. So I don't want to get ahead of us, but I feel like boundaries are a form of self-care. What do you think, Tobias?
Yes, I definitely agree. To piggyback on what you said about protecting. So if we look at the positive aspect of boundaries, let's look at them from the aspect of boundaries protects gifts.
Ooh.
And so if we look at the aspect of boundaries protecting a gift, then the gift would be love. So you have to protect love. And if we go a step further, we have to say boundaries protect our spouse, which is also a gift. And if we want to go a step further, then we can say boundaries protect our families, because our families are also a gift. So if we look at
wait, Tobias. You see, you do this all the time. And people who've been rocking with us, that you just drop gems and be like, okay, yeah, let's go on to the next thing. No, sir. You're
not about to let him do it, doctor.
Not today. Because we got to create these healthy boundaries that don't come across as walls. So I love how you put it and framed it, that if you think about it's protecting love, right? Then you said it's protecting what, our spouse, our marriage? What is
it protecting? Yes, our spouse. Yes.
And then it's protecting our family.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Just a different way of framing it. So I love that. I couldn't let you go on. Now you can go ahead.
But thank you. And so we instead of looking at boundaries as being a negative thing, let's look at them in the terms of protecting. And so we always want to protect those things that we love, which is love, our spouses and our families. And so we have to set parameters around those things which we care about and love.
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, if we just recklessly give away, right? Recklessly have ourselves open, it can cause a downfall, and it can also cause resentment. When you don't have safe boundaries, like norms, and in education and in corporate communities and in other organizations, they call them norms. They are how do we communicate with each other? What have we decided on collectively, and how we communicate and how we space with each other. And so I love how you put that framework. Go ahead, Lisa. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Actually, when you said that about an organization, we often talk about the spouses or couple making decisions that move the unit forward. Well, that's an organism within itself, right? And so when my husband and I got married, he would be like, well, we got married, therefore it should be kumbaya. And because he's like, we're together, but we came with different norms. I came from the Lewis family and he came from the Daniels family. So there was a merger between two families, two organizations, two institutions, two ideals, two norms, where we had to figure out how we were going to merge together and continue to be in matrimony. So it sets the direction of how the marriage is going to go. Yeah. Because you do have triggers. And sometimes you don't even know that it's a trigger to your significant other. Your spouse does something, you'd be like, hold up, swole up. I don't like that. Don't do that again. But it has to be constructive because you don't want to place blame on them for a past hurt, but you want to recognize or have it recognized and rectified so it doesn't derail the marriage.
Absolutely. Because you think about, and I love, again, what Tobias said, is that, the boundaries is really about giving yourself a certain level of freedom, autonomy, and personal well-being that can be maintained, right? And so we have to have these kind of tough conversations of what does it look like, a boundary look like in my old life versus what it looks like now in this combined merger, and how do we want to move so that we set a firm foundation in building this home. Go ahead, Tobias. I know you
look like you're going to drop another gem. Come on, counselor.
Come on here.
So what I'm hearing is that you're telling me that there's a different parameter set for being a single person as opposed to being married. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, you most definitely heard it. Now, you most definitely heard that. But granted, now, with a caveat, right?
Okay.
It's only a difference when it's convenient for me. I'm just being honest. No,
you're not. That's okay. we all have our challenges in life.
No, it definitely has to be a difference, because when you're single, there's no accountability, there's no decision, because we're in partnership. I'm like Cameo, you live in a single life, you singing that over in marriage, we got a problem. Just
a whole one.
A whole problem.
So in the aspect of singleness, then the only person that usually gets hurt is probably you. If the boundaries are not set, you're the person that's going to probably end up hurt. However, there's a lot of collateral damage if the boundaries aren't set in a marriage, because a lot of other people are affected. The spouse is affected, as well as the children, depend on how bad the boundary was not set. Yeah. So we have to be mindful of the things that we do.
And say.
And say, correct.
I was just putting in the chat for those who are on, and thank you so much. Lakeisha and Tim and Angela McKinney and Joyce Lee and Angie and Melton and Grace and DeAndre. Thank you so much for joining us. Like, you all have been faithful, so we really appreciate you rocking out with us. But put it in the chat. Give StreamYard permission so we can see your responses. What do you think about this whole concept about creating boundaries versus walls, and just the information that we've presented so far? Go ahead.
So that was a good segue. We're going to talk about walls. So what's the difference, right, of walls versus boundaries? Because we said boundaries are necessary in order to keep the marriage prosperous and loving, even though at times the conversation around setting boundaries can be difficult. We said they're necessary. So what's the difference between walls? How may they inhibit the marriage from being more on the positive experience than the negative experiences?
Well, I want to say that walls, if I'm hearing correctly, and definitely correct me, we talk about walls are firm, right? They're very fixed in their ability. It's very, it's you understand why it's there. It's meant, and it could be a form of protection, but it's meant to be a sense where you cannot penetrate it. Whereas a boundary should have some flexibility because you're in a relationship, you're moving, you're growing, life evolves. But it also should be a collective moving, right? I can't set a boundary, a personal boundary that affects the unit, and I haven't had a conversation with my spouse about this new boundary. It needs to be an agreed upon collective sense of norms and agreements that we come up with. So that's what I have so far.
And walls would be a defense mechanism. Again, let's go back to that word which we've been using a lot so far, protecting. And so we all have our defense mechanisms where we protect ourselves. So in terms of that, then a conversation definitely has to be had, because there's possibly some early trauma that you may not be aware of in regards to the spouse. And so when Lisa spoke about triggers, then walls go up instead of boundaries. And you want more boundaries in your marriage instead of walls, because walls don't allow anything to come in and they don't allow anything to go out.
Absolutely. I'm going to interject for a moment because someone said that the streaming was frozen. Please let us know in the chat if you can see us. I see from my phone that it's clear, but I want to make sure that we are being heard and seen. So Melton put up something earlier, and he said, we were talking about, give us some feedback around the conversation. He said, millennials, and I asked him to tell us more. And then he said, Gen X, Y, and Zs. Okay, so he said, a king protects his domain and the citizens of his kingdom. And so I want you to tell us more about where you're going with that, Melton, if you don't mind. In terms, I'm assuming you're talking about in terms of walls. So just tell us a little bit more about that. And then Lakeisha said, give an example of what a healthy boundary, I love it, healthy boundary looks and sounds like. One should not feel like they are being isolated or not informed. Let's put it out there.
For me, a healthy boundary is, and I think it changes. So for me, recently, actually, as of this week, my slant has always been towards my career and my profession. COVID has said, not so, madam. And so I had to bend my boundary. And that, in a particular situation, was called into question. And I literally felt in that moment, I had to make a choice between my career and how it impacted in the future and keeping my family whole, like, and keeping the bubble, the wall. And Milton, not only does the king protect the domain, the queen does too, because in that moment I was like, home chick, this ain't going down. my family needs this moment, this lifestyle, and I have chosen in many ways my career over my family to a certain point, and I'm just like, I'm not doing that right now. Like we as a nation, individual families, like we've taken on a whole lot to survive this pandemic that's outside of our control. And I'm like, I'm not mitigating this. Like, there's nothing I feel I can do. So this is what it is. Yeah. So I could have chosen to continue down the path, and my family, I felt, would suffer the consequences, and it just wasn't happening. I wouldn't have felt that way probably even 5 years ago. But you do what is necessary to protect your domain, I think, and that's a wall. But that wasn't a wall within inside of our family. That was a wall that I presented in that situation. Was like, yeah, nah, nope.
Yeah. I was just thinking, and Tobias, definitely feel free to chime in. When the thought came up about, give an example of healthy boundary, I think the greatest example has to be in how we communicate with each other, in terms of how we address conflict. See, most of the times we don't have a problem when things are good. Like, we can hang with each other. We love being around each other. We flow. But when that conflict happens, the first boundary you need to have is, how am I going to communicate? And when I'm communicating, so we spoke about this in a couple of other sessions, that if I say I need time, like I need time before we address this, then the boundary is give me time. Although that ain't my thing. I'm the one that likes to get it done. That's my husband's thing. He'd be like, give me time. But that is a boundary, right? And the more I press into the boundary, and this is going a little ahead of where we're going, but the more I press into a boundary, it soon will become a wall, because I don't want you to talk about it until I'm ready. That's a healthy. Go ahead.
And again, that is a healthy boundary. Give me time to process.
Yeah.
And that's very needed in a relationship, because again, we all of us have things going on in our respective lives. Yeah. And so if I say, give me time to process, or give me time, what you're saying is, give me time to process, and we will revisit this later. Mm-hmm. But the later needs to be a determined time. That's the other part of that. Usually when we say later, we're hoping, or it's just hanging out there, or we're hoping that maybe someone forgets. So you're like, okay, let's sweep this under the rug. But hey, we didn't talk about this. Oh, we did. Oh, okay. What was it again?
Wait. I need to record this. Oh, it is being recorded, because I need to play this for Mr. David. Like, come back. I love what you said, because that, let me speak at another time. It's ambiguous. It doesn't really bring us any kind of clarity and resolution, so that we don't have walls and we can abide in our boundaries. Go ahead. That was powerful.
Thank you. But that needs to also be a conversation that's had prior to the situation occurring. You can't have it unless you say, okay, once the situation occurs, give me a day. And then, okay, it's now next week and nothing has been stated. Okay, you asked for a day, and now we're a week down the road and we still have no conversation about this, no resolution. So again, the component of time to that is very important, because it lets the other person know, okay, you are being mindful of this situation. And not only that, you're being mindful and considerate of my feelings. Because if you just brush it off, then now you're telling me my feelings don't matter. And what I'm thinking doesn't matter.
Absolutely. I also think it's incumbent upon, because I'm Mr. David. Because when I say we'll talk about it later, that means I don't really want to talk about it. And we definitely should be talking about it right now, because I'm going to say something that I shouldn't be saying. So I do think though individuals such as myself need time to process, so we don't say something crazy, but also because that's the way we process. I think it's incumbent upon that person to say, give me 48 hours, or, whatever time is needed. It may be longer than that, depending on the situation, but give me this time. And I'm vowing to you that I will come back and speak to you about it, because I do care about you and I do want us to work through this. So yeah, I feel Mr. David on that. Like, no, we can't talk about this right now. Can't talk about this right now.
I'm old school, and Melton was talking about old school. I'm old school too. I like to deal with stuff. I don't do well with passive aggressive stuff. And it's not that he's being passive aggressive. It's just like, I like to deal with it and move on. I don't.
But you don't want to deal with it in the wrong way, because for me, it's not even about you or my husband. It's about, I love you enough not to say the crazy that's going through my mind to you.
That would be wise. That would be wise. So let me back up.
And just because the other person is ready to deal with it doesn't mean the spouse is.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's where the processing comes in. And the other thing about that is knowing your spouse. So if they say, give me time to process, usually if they haven't stated it by now, chances are they're still processing. Absolutely. So you have an internal clock in your head. Okay, this happened on Wednesday, and they said I need to process this. We'll probably revisit this maybe Friday or Saturday. Just knowing the nature of your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing the nature of your spouse is very key also in this situation. Those unspoken rules, unspoken languages between the spouses.
Absolutely, because nonverbal is definitely more powerful than verbal. But I gotta give Milton this space right here for a moment. He said, all of these conversations remind me of how not ready I was for marriage. You better come on here.
And listen, Mr. Milton, it's definitely a grown folks game. Like, it ain't no joke. I mean, listen, I got the best husband. And there's just some days, if y'all remember Michael Basin, he used to be on the radio. I think he still is, but he used to have this statement, sometimes you want to shake folks till they woozy. Just a little bit. I mean, you don't want to hurt them. You just want to shake them. Like, that's what sometimes marriage will do to you. So, but I mean, these conversations are necessary when you have someone that you really care about, which is why it's wise, in my opinion, to have someone say in the heat of the moment that we just need to couch this for a minute. Especially for my husband and I, like, we're strong in different ways, but let's be clear, we both alphas. And if you hit us wrong, like, it's just gonna go left. So let's just not do it. Let's go to our corners, get our thoughts together, and come back and act like grown adults and not just like pick at each other and tear each other down, because if I hurt you, I've hurt myself.
Absolutely. So, you know what?
That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's good right there.
If I hurt you, I hurt myself.
You do.
What? You all make me feel a little proud to be on this stage.
Well, that lesson was a long time coming, because when I first got married, they was like, two become one. I was like, no, ain't we two coming into one marriage? Like, I didn't really get that, you know? Yeah. So that was a well-earned lesson.
Absolutely. You know what? And I love Lakeisha. Lakeisha's my cousin. Hey, cuz. Lakeisha brought up a question, and it goes back to what we were saying. Do boundaries stay in place forever? Can couples move past boundaries? Or do boundaries have to exist for a marriage to be harmonic? Well, yes, they definitely need to exist for you to have harmony in your marriage, because otherwise it's going to be a problem.
But it doesn't have to be the same boundary.
They have to say that again?
But it doesn't have to be the same boundary. Boundaries are important, yes, but I think if you're going to change the boundary, a conversation does need to be had.
So can couples move past boundaries?
Yes.
Okay.
And I also think boundaries don't stay in place forever. That to us is I define that as a wall. And that was a good segue into people come into marriage with walls. So when we were having this conversation, it somehow triggered, and I don't remember the exact component when we were prepping, but we came to the conclusion that walls do exist in marriage. So it's not like they don't exist. Cause I call them deal breakers. Thou shalt not do this, or I'm out.
Non-negotiables.
Non-negotiable. Like, you do that, bruh, I'm gone. Like, no questions asked. But I only have like one, maybe two of those. Everything else is negotiable and is workable, and we can have as many conversations we need to work on it and fix it and move past it. So to have so many walls that nothing can come in and out, that's why it's problematic. And as I always say, those people can be found in the counselor's office among the 50% of the people that get divorced.
So we're just going to drop her like that. Okay, no problem. Yes. Yes. Okay, so I would like for people in the chat, like we've been giving some examples, put some examples in the chat of what you believe, is an example of a healthy boundary, something that you've done in your marriage, in your relationship. That would be helpful. Also, this came up in the comment, and then we're going to do an engagement question. Tim says, I think the challenge in creating or being the architect of boundaries in a marriage is building together. Absolutely. In the example of time as a boundary, It seems one was the builder and the other was just compliant. How can we both build, or have I misunderstood?
That's deep. That's deep, Alan. First of all,
yeah, that's the family. They just come on and just do what they do.
I personally think that boundaries are personal to you.
Okay.
And I think that in order for the marriage to be successful, there is a type of compliance, but the person has to believe also that the boundary is necessary in order for the marriage to work. I can't set down a boundary and then be like, that's what it is. If my spouse doesn't believe in it, if he doesn't believe in it, that's where arguments happen, right? So there is a sort of compliance, but that's what's give and take. He may set a boundary and I have to buy it, or I don't have to, but I buy into it, right? To keep the unit moving forward. So
is that compliance or respect?
Both.
Compliance suggests that I'm your mama and you my daddy, and okay.
Well, you call it now. Wait a minute. You may not realize it, and we don't like to bring it up as women, but that's called submission, right?
Okay, now you're not gonna come down this road today, Lisa. No, you're not. No, you're not.
Submission, honey, to each other, because men like to leave that part out, but it is to each other. So it is a compliance.
Okay. But compliance is respect, though.
Right.
Say it again.
I think compliance is respect.
I like the word. It's like, okay, it might mean the same thing, but it's something about saying compliance makes me think of my daddy telling me something. Like I say respect, and thank you very much, Alan Kurt. Thank you. Because I feel like compliance almost comes across like, yes, it is compliance. I get it. But it comes across like you're forcing me. You're forcing me to do it. But when I'm respecting you, it's a gift that I give you.
I told them come to Jesus meeting. Sometimes there will be statements that I will make that you don't like, but they will be done. And in his case too, they will be done, or it's going to be a problem because that's some foolishness you got going on over there. So you cannot comply, but then depending on how the person feels about it, it's going to be an argument.
Yeah.
So either do you want to move past this and stay married, or do you want to make this a thing? Like, let's decide.
Okay, then I'll say what I said. It is what it is. I'll move on from that. Go ahead.
It's the language. It's actually the language. Don't get hung up on the language of compliant and respect. They it's the same thing. So
words matter, guys. Words matter. Okay,
words do matter.
We want to put the question engagement. Why do we put up walls? Why do we put up walls? And we want you to say that in the chat. Give us your response. Why do we put up walls?
Counsel.
We put up walls because, again, we're protecting ourselves. And so it could be some trauma that occurred that the spouse is not aware of. And to be quite honestly, the person hasn't even dealt with yet. Because it takes courage to deal with certain trauma. And so if I don't have the courage or the tools to go ahead and deal with certain trauma, then I'll just put makeup on it. And I'll just continue
not on a
to
pig. You put lipstick on a pig.
It's still a pig.
Okay.
Yeah,
it is still a pig.
What's that adage? If you cut the ears off a donkey, it's still cut the ears off a horse. No, cut the ears off a donkey. It's still, well, you know what I'm saying. Don't worry about it.
It's coming some country something that you know.
It's a real country thing. It's like, what? Okay.
You are not about value today. Okay.
But
I was thinking that, why do we put up walls? I think walls happen in our lives. Yes, Tobias, to your point, we come with walls because of experiences that we don't quite know we have until we're triggered in relationships, and it's normally during conflict. Let's just put that out there.
Mhm.
But the other thing is, the more we tap into the pain, and we were talking about it, in our conversation, is that the more you keep tapping into that pain point of your spouse when they're saying, no, that hurts, this is my boundary, you keep pressing into the boundary, the more that area becomes calloused, and I build a wall, because I don't want to deal with the issue, I don't want to deal with the pain, and I don't want you to keep tapping into someplace where I told you it's hurting. Right? And I'm just being honest. So I create a wall.
Did we take you there?
What'd you say?
We look like we took you there. Come back to us.
I don't want to keep having this conversation about it hurts. And I think and it goes both ways, right? I'm very sure in the conversations I have with my husband that there are times that he's like, look, now, I done said I don't want to talk about this. I need you to back up. And there are times I'm like, look, dude. So it happens. But the more you press into it, this is how the walls are erected. So that's my view on that. Keep going. Somebody said we put up walls because of the experience we have that cause us to make inferences and assumptions. Ooh, good point about our spouse. We really do not like to see conflict coming and don't trust love to work for us. You better come on. Thank you so much, Elise. This is helpful. This is why we're here. Let's have a conversation. What are you all thinking? Why do we put up walls?
Well, I think, like we said, we already come in with walls. Mm-hmm. And I like the person's, Lakeisha's point that we don't trust love to win. And some of you might recall that the counselor said in one of our shows that love and marriage are a gamble. We don't know it's going to work out. We don't know that the horse that we chose is going to win the race, right? It's a gamble. I mean, we go in thinking, but not necessarily so. So I think we come in with those walls, and hopefully, it has been my experience, thankfully, that love does win. Mm-hmm. My husband and I have been patient enough with one another to deal with whatever kind of comes out when that piñata is hit, and we like, oh Lord, here we go. And so right. I think it's a matter of patience and seeking to be helpful to the other person when you don't know what's going on, because they had a life before you. So they may tell you a story or a situation of that cause the trauma, mm-hmm. but to understand the magnitude and the impact, you don't know until something happens. Absolutely. And you're just kind of bracing for it.
And the other thing about when that trauma is exposed, even though it was exposed as an individual, we handle it as a couple. I feel like that.
Did you say
Listen, what just happened? Mind blown.
Is there one at the altar? Go
ahead. Because the what happens is, again, as Lisa spoke earlier about, the two shall become one. So, and then she spoke about what affects you affects me. So if it affects you individually, it has to affect us collectively, or we have no unit. Mm-hmm, and so if we have no unit, then what exactly do we have? So we have to actually invest that time to say, hey, I'm here, and let you know that you have to create a trusting atmosphere. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. A trusting atmosphere, which means it's safe enough to say, okay, we can handle this together.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, listen, you're right in line with this comment from Yvette that says we build walls because historical trauma, and we hope that the person we choose will not contribute to it. Right?
Yes.
That part. Yeah. And it is in the conversations of boundaries. Like when we get it, like, okay, this is a trigger. Okay, let's have conversation about how we're going to proceed in this. So when we deal with this again, because we're human, we're going to deal with it again at some point. We know mm-hmm. how to proceed. And so that was very powerful, Yvette. Thank you so much for that.
I want to say one more.
Go ahead. How do you, I want you to say your point, but then answer this. How do you create psychological safety in a marriage for that to happen? So that just came to me to ask about that. But
psychological safety, okay, which probably will be in line with what I'm about to say. Okay, that was good. So I heard something that was very psychological safety.
I know, right? She put out a PhD word on us today.
And there's a doctor in the house. Keep going.
SARS, my SARS. Okay. So I heard a couple say, I heard a wife say to her husband that you didn't protect me.
Ooh.
And that is very, very, very troubling. And
wow,
because that's a very loaded statement, that you didn't protect me. And what she was saying was that you did not create a safe atmosphere for us by not creating boundaries. Because boundaries aren't just what you do, but it's what you won't do.
I need somebody to put that in the chat because I can't even type. I'm so blown.
Okay.
Like, yeah. Okay.
That's the definition of true leadership, right? When
yes.
you want a head of your household to understand what it is to be a leader, when and be wise.
Yeah.
And be his helpmate in order to, again, move the family unit forward. It's not always about what you can do, it's what you won't do. That's true. Go ahead. Go ahead. You got it. All you need to add my spice to it.
So she said, develop psychological safety before the I do. But you know what? There is a level of psychological safety you can have, but the reality is when you say that I do, you
don't know what you're saying. I do too.
You're facing.
Yeah.
You just don't know what you're going to face. And we said this before. None of us with clear minds go into a relationship with the vows are being made and said in sickness and in health. And we'd be like, oh yeah, it's going to be sickness. In richer and poor, oh, we're going to be poor. No, we don't do that. We really don't believe that those circumstances are going to happen to us. And those circumstances become triggers for experiences that we've had. And when we don't deal with them, then they become walls. Oh, I just want a seat at the altar because I know I'm preaching. All right.
Is there one? You got me, doctor. If you ain't got nobody else today, you got me.
Come on to Jesus. Just lay it all at Wait. You said I need his notes. Oh, very good. All right, so go ahead. So we've been talking about the why do we put up walls, and we said, that ideally the person should be met with love and compassion. Speak to that. Like, even if you don't understand it, seek to be helpful. How can we do that?
By being understanding. In the aspects of trauma, I wasn't there when it occurred, but I'm going to help you get through this.
Now that right there is sexy. We're all grown on here, but that right there, yeah, that
you want to know. I mean, your man wants to know you got him, you holding him down, but it's nothing about when my husband holds me down. Or he like catches me in my throat because he didn't like what I said. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right. It's nothing like it. It's nothing like it. Okay, go ahead, Tobias. We got caught up. Sorry, y'all.
Again, because we are a team. And so I can't be a team of one person. So I have to make sure, and again, it's called balance. Have to make sure you are okay in all aspects because love protects. And I can't say I love you and I'm not protecting you and I'm not protecting us. So I have to, again, set those boundaries and make sure that I am protecting the gift. And again, creating that psychological safety that you spoke about.
Yeah. Joyce Lee, and I won't read all of it only because she's speaking to what we were talking about. You know, we don't know what we expect from the spouse, but she's thanking God for the examples, you know, of our parents. And, you know, however, dealing with some of the newer marriages, there's not a lot of conversations about how not to build walls and how to avoid them. And then once the walls, you know, begin, they will come up again because of triggers. Yeah, we just don't have a lot of conversations. We pretty much were just push through it, deal with it, or we don't deal with it at all. So yeah, excellent point, Joyce. Excellent point. Oh, this is a question. This is interesting. Do women spy a man's existing kingdom before she decides to become a part of it?
Is this mic on? Yes, sir. We do. And I would also offer, if men don't, they should.
Absolutely.
You should spy on the kingdom of any person, right? Because if they don't have the accoutrements and that's foundational to a marriage, again, you're gonna find yourself in a counselor's office. So if they into foolishness when you spied on them, please exit stage left.
Because guess what? It doesn't change.
A lot of it doesn't.
Somehow we believe, though, that our love, our good loving, will change. I'm just being honest.
You saying sometimes when we put it on them, it don't work.
When we put it on them, it's gonna make it better. But the reality is, you can put it on them all day, and if they are a donkey, and if it's doing what donkeys do, your put it on it ain't gonna change the donkeyness to them. I'm just putting it.
So you sound like that piece of advice that my dad gave me before I married my husband. Yeah. He was like, there needs to be a reconciliation between what you don't like about your husband. Like, you need to be comfortable with that, because once you get married, you're going to like it even less.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when I went into my marriage, or the day I got married, I felt a complete peace. That whatever he hadn't changed, I was okay. Now, over time, some of that shifted, but he had and I had street cred at that point with each other, where we could have those conversations and say, well, maybe we need to change this because it's not working anymore. But initially, I went in saying, I'm cool.
Yeah. And I've been very, very blessed that mine comes from, thank God, from good family. Like I was looking, and I'm sure he was looking too. Like, is she crazy? Because we come from, I'm being honest, we come from, both my husband and I, we've been married before. So coming into a second relationship, your walls are definitely up. Like, you got to work in the marriage to tear down the walls in a lot of ways before you can deal with some of the boundary issues. But that was a true conversation. Like, hey, this is bothering me because of this other situation. And I love what Lakeisha says. She says, believe what the other is telling you is their truth. Girl, that right there is fire. That's fire.
Say it from the back, Lakeisha, so they can hear. That's for the dating folks. That's for the folks still dating. If that fool is showing you the truth, please walk away. Man, I can say it from a chest. Don't do it. Just don't do it. It's not necessary to fix people because go ahead.
No, we don't have the ability to do it. That's what I was going to say. We don't have the ability to do it. What we can do is walk with them through the journey.
No, some people no. Some people journey just no.
If that's your spouse, you gonna leave them?
Well, I'm saying before you, like, what Mr. Milton? He said you scope their domain. If you see crazy, you don't have to walk with them. Walk away before you even marry them and say I do. That was his whole question.
Okay, so I'm gonna put this out there, and these are for my single people. Okay, this is for my single people, because once you're in marriage, we're not telling you to get out of marriage. We're not. This show. That's another show. This ain't this show. But when you think about, when you're going in and not having that psychological safety, not having those physical boundaries, and I'm going to speak on behalf of women that I know. Okay, can't speak for all women. a lot of times we put a lot of energy into trying to fix. We are very good. A lot of women are builders. So we naturally want to nurture. We naturally want to give you a come on, you can do it. Come on. We naturally want to do that. And we'll go through all of the process of fixing up, showing up, hearing your psychological issues, crying when you cry, laughing when you laugh, and then you get together and go be with Sally.
Right.
That's the problem that I have.
I call it those women want a piece of man. They rather than have no man, they want a piece of man. Leave them alone.
Tell my daughter, you are no one psychologist, therapist, deal with you and have them deal with themselves.
Or ATM, showgirl, you none of that.
Absolutely.
It's nothing like free help, though. Nothing. From the men's perspective, it's nothing like free help. So I can't let you just get away with that. I got to say something on behalf of the men. You know?
But you know what? I can't blame you because we're so willing to do it.
Right. For free.
I needed that at the time. I needed all of that. I needed that. I sure appreciate it.
You needed a therapist and a counselor.
Right.
And a job probably.
Right.
If that was the situation.
Right.
I'm just saying. But you know what? That goes to physical boundaries, emotional boundaries. And we're going to get into that conversation about, 5 healthy boundaries, areas that affect us. And one of the engagement questions we have for this, are we ready to move on to that?
We are.
Yes.
So I just want to tell the audience, this conversation has been so good. We're like almost at an hour. So we're not going to rush through it. We're going to give it the time that it needs, but just hang with us this show because we going over an hour, y'all, but we're going to try to keep it as timely as possible, but we have a whole new subject next month, so we don't necessarily want to go into a part 2. So just hang with us because we're going to talk to, as the doctor has spoken about, the 5 healthy boundaries, and then give you a tool as to how you can execute this. So just hang with us. We're going to go over a little bit, but we promise it's going to be worth it, right, y'all?
It's going to be so good.
Yes.
This conversation is so good, and I love it because we have questions that are coming from the audience. This is why we're here, to be a resource and to grow together. So this question is coming about boundaries. How do we ensure privacy is respected and available to both parties? You have to speak to this in the chat. We definitely want to. How do you ensure privacy is respected and available to both parties?
The counselor is such an expert on this. What you say, counselor?
Well, again, trust is paramount in this situation. Again, if we don't have any trust, then we don't have anything. So trust is the key. And as we talked about on the previous show, privacy is different than secrets. So if we're looking at privacy is my individual space, my individual time that is for me to regroup, recalibrate, and to make me better.
Go ahead, Lisa.
And I definitely agree with what Tobias said. And I think it's necessary because like way earlier, y'all might not remember because it's hard to believe we headed quickly towards a year of planning and doing this show. So it's a little bit cray to me that we, I guess move so fast, but we talked about everything that goes through your mind, right? You need time and space to think about and process so you don't say just any old crazy thing to your spouse or to your partner. So those thoughts are private until you can execute them in a helpful and useful manner. So if you're always like down your spouse's throat, tell me, that's when you get the crazy talk. So everyone needs that space to be individual, to grow, to have different experiences. Because in my opinion, when I'm able to have different experiences outside of being a wife and a mother, that makes me such a richer, deeper, more thoughtful person, and my engagement with you is so much better when I have the ability to be Lisa for the moment and be accountable to no one else. So that's why I think privacy is important versus secrecy. Yeah, you gonna get punched in your throat because you doing something you ain't got no business doing. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna shake you till you're woozy.
Right, because we're not talking about violence, people. But yeah, because privacy and respect, privacy goes to definitely boundaries, but secrecy goes to intention. Like, what's the intent of your heart? Normally, you trying to keep something, hidden. So you have to kind of check that in and of itself. So let's jump into a high level, jump into these boundaries. Physical, emotional space, me time, allowing your partner to have space to emote and understand their personal emotions and feelings. Everyone in the chat and up here, what do you think about the physical, emotional space, me time?
It's needed. Mm-hmm. My favorite me time space is the spa.
Yeah. I
love that.
And my privacy is just, my me time is just unwinding. So I'm usually up way earlier than she is because a lot of my writings occur in the middle of the night or early morning. So I'm usually writing early in the mornings. So that's usually my me time, or a good ride around town. I'll put on some jazz and just go and collect my thoughts, just a journey around town. Nothing going on, just riding and listening to the music, taking in the scenic view.
Yeah. Because you need that time to settle yourself. As individuals, we're coming to the relationship with all kind of thoughts, right? And life is happening to each of us individually and then affecting us collectively. And so sometimes you need time. And for those who are believers, you need time to be alone with God and just kind of see how your day is going and how reconcile this in my spirit, Lord. So I definitely believe emotional, physical space is needed. Someone say absolutely a must. Give me a few. Oh, must be talking about some massages. All right. Get off of the line, Yvette. All right. Wait, this one's going to be interesting. Sexuality.
Glory.
So we talked about that sex is a gift. It's a mutual longing for you to be with your spouse. Counselor.
I love what you said, counselor.
What say you?
So yes, sexuality is definitely a gift and it promotes intimacy. And so it is not to be taken because that's something else when it is taken. And so we want both parties to actually enjoy this. Yeah. So, I was making sure we were on task. So you definitely don't want you want both parties to enjoy, and the communication. What is it that you like? What is it that we need to do different? What can we do? And so again, it goes back to conversation. What can we do differently? Because again, it's there for both of us.
And guess what? You got to have boundaries on what you willing to take in the sexual part. I'm just being honest. Like, we're grown people here. It has to be a mutual understanding about what's comfortable to both of us, what's uncomfortable, because it's not going to be a mutual longing if you're doing something she doesn't want you to do and she's doing something you don't want her to do. So I'm going to bring you back in off of that conversation.
Thank you. So the next one is outside friends and influences. So as I was saying, as I was saying, to have friends and outside influences, that comes with parameters too. So I'm not going to necessarily go there, but it's necessary to have other outlets, because your spouse or your children can't be your end all to be all. And so to have different friends or different events or projects you're involved in as an individual, again, in my opinion, lead to a deepness, different perspectives. So you can have something to talk about. Because you're talking about till death do us part, and you gonna be with your boo for 50 years. Like, y'all can't be, talking about the same thing. Like, you gotta expand your horizons and not bore him to death.
Oh Lord. Okay, I felt that. I know.
You can't do that if you don't have other interests besides it. It's just important to have interests together, but it's also important to have interests outside of the marriage. And so during the prep session, we were talking about having the acceptability of friendships in the marriage. And I was telling the team, there was one girl that my husband, I think we were married at that point, where the stories I would tell him just get on his last nerve. He was like, you need to stop talking to her. And y'all know that men don't usually comment on women's business unless it's bringing drama to his house and you upsetting his wife. That means he's upset because you like messing with his tranquility. And men, y'all know men don't like drama, so they eliminate it as quickly as possible. So
Lord have mercy, I can't with you.
That leads us to the next engagement question, Doctor.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Do all our friends need to be mutual, or are we cool with having some separate connections of the, catch this, opposite sex? We want to hear from you in the chat, because this was brought up. Yes, it was. Interesting. Go ahead.
So for me and husbands, wives always say, well, the other husband's going to be there. Okay. And you told me that because? And so as Chris Rock liked to say, so now you got a man's play date. I don't know this dude.
A man's play date.
Right. Say, y'all can be friends. No, we can't. I don't know him. I don't trust him. His alliance is to you all. So we just gonna sit there and watch the game. That's it. I'm not gonna call him. I'm not gonna ask him for his number. No.
I'm gonna ask him for his number.
But see, we want to have some friends where we can all hang out, and but I understand that, because sometimes my husband's like, no, I don't want to go. And I'm like, this is what I told him.
I'm gonna give you a tip. They never want to go.
They never want to go. I'm like, you got me out here in these streets like you're a phantom, like you're a ghost husband. What you doing?
If they go, the only reason they going, because again, they want to stay married. It depends on how important it is really for you to go. If you acting like you don't care, they like, cool, I stay at the house.
Right. But then you get that, you really want me to go? Yes.
Then they be like, all right.
So let's get to the meat of this question, because sometimes we don't care about the mutual friends. I want to get to that bottom, the next part. Are we cool? Listen, I like real
That's
conversation.
True.
Are we cool with having some separate connections of the opposite sex?
So listen.
Here we go.
Listen.
I'm of the opinion.
Thomas' mother said,
Say it with your chest. Say it with your chest now.
You cannot have friends of the opposite sex unless somebody thinks somebody ugly on the down low. That's my opinion.
They gotta be ugly.
Well, not attractive. Maybe is that better? They're not. Someone's not attracted to the other person. And even if there is like he's handsome or whatever, if you keeping this person in the shroud of darkness and I don't know nothing about them,
that part,
that's a whole problem.
Thomas
because
said,
why you don't need no more friends, okay? You don't need them kind of friends, because that's a setup. Then again, we're gonna be back in the counselor's office because you're not about to do that. That's a wall.
Okay, so I gotta say, so I have one of my best friends is of the opposite sex. So I'm a little on the biased side only because if I come into a relationship with you and they've been my best friend for years.
But was they a friend before you got married?
They were a friend before I got married.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Okay. Thank you for grace. Thank you for grace. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the difference. You introduced him. You made sure you're, as comfortable as another man can be. I don't know if they completely comfortable, but comfortable enough where he like, okay, I'm gonna make an exception. But you getting brand new friends of the opposite sex? Hold up, swole up.
Yeah. And there is a time capsule that I tell people about these brand new friends. How long was it before they came along? And then now you just show up with these new buddies? Yeah, that's going to raise some questions. That's going to raise a whole lot of questions.
I want to hear people in the chat. I don't see anybody here. Like Thomas Melton is bold, but he was like, nope, can't have him. Nope.
Yeah, nope.
I need to know, other people, are you cool with having some separate connections of the opposite sex? Let us know in the chat for those people who are on there and then you're married. Let's hear from you. Let's hear from you. Keep going.
I say nope. Don't even try it. Don't even go past go because it's just not going to work out for you.
Okay, it's tea time.
I can't with y'all.
Here we go. So this is we were out with some coworkers, and a friend of mine. Shout out to the committee. And friends of mine we were hanging out, and so my wife and her friend said that the friend lived downtown. We were on Beale Street, so the probability was very high for them to come to Beale Street after their outing. That's what my mind. I said that we're probably going to run into them. Mm-hmm. But the way we ran into them was the problem. So it was a group of us, but then it came to be just me and her. And so we were coming, come on back. And so we were coming out, it was all innocent. And so we were coming out of the club, and the club is dark and it's bright outside on Beale. And so we were like, oh my goodness, it's so bright. And so we would like have my arm around her and was like, oh my goodness, it's so bright outside. And so
let him finish, doctor.
And again, this was a friend, this was someone that she didn't know about. And so
I was trying to help you.
Yeah. And so we were standing there. And so the friend came up first and said, hey, what you doing? And so at that moment, I was like, okay, where's my wife? I know she's here because you earlier in the night, you all were together. And so she was across the street fuming. If she could have stared lasers through me, I was like, it looked bad. I give you that. It did look bad, but it was all innocent. I assure you, it was all innocent. And the lady had just moved into town. She had just started working with the agency. Yeah. So
I think it knows.
I don't know.
I'm trying to help you, but I don't know how to help you. I would just say that in those moments, you just have to, that's where your street cred gonna have to come in. Like, you can't have many of those incidences.
That part.
Because you start having too many, even if it is an innocence to it, right? I think we failed to mention it, but one of your nuggets that you brought up, optics are in the preface that optics are important to your spouse. So you may be innocent, but if your spouse's perspective is different, that it looks shady, and that's another thing about women. If we stop trusting you, dude, when a woman's fed up, you over. So you don't get too many of them times.
Yeah. And you know what? To be honest with you, if he was in a situation like that, I don't even know if I was her on the other side, if I would want. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, why didn't you just go over and introduce her to your wife? But when you
that occurred, we did that.
So, but if you have your own assumptions about what's going on, that might not be that might not work out.
Oh, it's still a topic. Let's just say.
See? You
Hold
can't have
on.
too many of those on either
Even-
side. Well, let's be clear, on either side.
Right.
Even though we have hung out with her boyfriend and everything.
She ain't married.
And I was like, we hung out with them for couples on couples
She
night.
ain't
We hung-
married.
So
You know?
again,
Even my friendship and my best friend, like we have to be, there's still boundaries because I am married. And so I'm very forthright with, I'm going here, I'm doing this, and I still have to be careful because my husband's a man.
Right.
yeah.
Bottom line. I mean,
I also think to your wife or any wife, she ain't married.
Mhm.
So on some level, I won't say completely, but if she was married to her boyfriend, I think it would give her a certain level of comfortability. Maybe not completely, because if you gonna cheat, you gonna cheat. I mean, you can't stop anyone from doing that. But when you just a girlfriend, I mean, I'm not trying to shade girlfriends because that's how you get to marriage. But there's a different level of trust if it's husband and wives getting together, having an outing versus they dating.
Well, absolutely. I agree with that.
Her introduction to my wife was not the most ideal.
Right.
And so
so she got one good eye on her. She like,
and I apologize for the optics because optics are definitely important. I mentioned that in our pre-planning because I heard a judge say this: the appearance of an impropriety is just as bad as the impropriety itself.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Because think about it. We say you're guilty and innocent till proven guilty, but the reality is, with our assumptions and who we are as humans, we convict you, and then we'll figure out how we can make you innocent again. It's just the reality.
Yeah.
It's just the reality.
So the last one is time. So we talked about the 3 aspects of being alone, which we kind of touched on that: me time, date night.
Yep.
Y'all need to get together, and put it on each other.
Whatever that means. And all of it is not just about sex.
Right.
We understand that there's sometimes just common going on a walk. It does not always have to lead to sex. So we want to put that out there.
Yes, exactly. And family time. So all those kind of different dynamics are needed in order for the family to feel, or the couple to feel like they're getting their space and not being taken for granted. And because also having those different dynamics also keep you grounded, and in my opinion, support good mental health. So that's important. So we done gone over like 15 minutes at this point. So we're going to move to the counselor to talk about our tool, and then we're going to bring it on home.
All right.
So our tool that can help with trust is called the Blindfold Technique. And the Blindfold Technique, you can blindfold your spouse for 15 minutes and guide them through the house as well as outside. And the goal is to trust the intent of the spouse's heart. I know a lot of us like to be in control, but at some point during the marriage, at some point during the marriage, the spouse will have to be the eyes and ears for the both of you. And there's no better way than to say, I trust you. And using this blindfold technique, it's really simple. You can just get a blindfold and just guide them through the house. It's really no counselor is actually needed. We actually can view it though, and just to see how that you feel going through that experience, because you're totally dependent upon the other person at that time to make sure you don't run into anything and hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And I also think that's like an actual manifestation, because whether you trust your spouse or not, whatever they do or don't do impacts you. So that type of technique allows you to build, it's like a muscle. Trust is like a muscle. So the more you build it and concentrate on it, then the better it is for the marriage, because you're trusting them, whether you realize it or not. You're trusting them to, do what's in your best interest. So and whether they do or not, there is a trust that you've given them automatically just by marrying them. So
absolutely
building trust between each other in that visual way, in my opinion, because people, I think a majority learn by seeing and doing. So we came up with that tool as a helpful way, a discovery. So if you discover that, you know, there's some trust going on there, seek professional help.
Yes.
Because so this is just kind of identifying it. It's not to be offered as a resolution in the sense of to fix the issues, just the discovery mode.
Absolutely. And it could always lead to other things. And we all win. Okay.
Let's bring it on home. Next month's topic is going to be on financial literacy, because April's financial literacy month. So we want to talk about them coins, honey, because that is a very important topic in the sense that is not actually the reason. People may be surprised to know money is not the number one reason people get divorced, but it is a top reason. Yeah. So we want to talk about aspects of how to better ensure that your coins are right before you go into marriage, and then to keep them on track. So that is what we'll be touching on next week. Is there anything left unsaid, which is one of my favorite coaching questions when I'm ending? Is there anything left unsaid, counselor and doctor?
No, not next week. You mentioned next week. It's not next week.
I'm sorry, not next week. Yeah. 2 weeks from now. My bad. Yeah. 2 weeks from now.
And we just want to thank you all for continuing to rock out. For those who have come and gone, those who will catch us on the replay, we love you coming and sharing this time with us. Look, we went over 15 minutes and people are still rocking. So I think it was a needful conversation. The questions that came up were helpful. And those who are catching us in the replay, please, please, please leave some feedback and ask questions, because we do go back and respond to that. If you would like to see us outside of the truth and nothing but the truth, you can reach me at www.bewhatmattersllc.com. I'm also on social media at Dr. KC Fuller Scott. And with Be What Matters, speaking, coaching, training, leadership development, consulting. So I would love to be able to help you as a leader and help your team if needed. So thank you so much for that. And I also moderate church events, which I did today, and it was outstanding. All that stuff. So Lisa, tell them how they can connect with you.
So my website is www.thelionheartsociety.com. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at the Lionheart Society LLC. I am an executive leadership coach. And also, in addition to that, I do coaching and consulting around creating healthy relationships in order for individuals to win in marriage and parenthood. So that is what I do. That's what I love to do. I'm passionate about it, because at the end of the day, for me, it's about them babies.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. In the soft, Tobias.
And I am Ittrick Tobias. You can find me on Facebook at Tobias Towers, and on Instagram, Instagram is Words Give Me Life _77.
Absolutely. Listen, we just thank you again. We are out here trying to create better families, better marriages, families, and communities. And we thank you so much. We will see you in 2 weeks. God bless you. Please be safe. And we will see you later. See you all, guys. All right.